Over the last few days, we've seen some stunning images coming out of Portland, Oregon, where Donald Trump and his Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection basically formed this Black Ops task force in order to put down the protests that have been raging in Portland for the last 50 days, sparked by the murder of George Floyd. So it's clear that the Trump administration will no longer allow these protests to continue without the interference of the federal government. And what we're learning also is Trump has threatened himself to expand this program to every major city across the country. His acting Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli, who's a right-wing fucking lunatic, wasn't Senate confirmed to be in that position also, by the way. He's also threatening to expand this program. All of this should frighten and outrage everyone in this country. Because just the premise alone of a federal law enforcement effort whose sole purpose is to silence protesters who are exercising their First Amendment right across the country. Just that, the premise of such a program is incredibly unconstitutional and illegal. But more than that, what we're learning, what we're hearing of their actions on the ground creates a whole new level of outrage, because their tactics are incredibly similar to the tactics of the death squads, the CIA death squads that we've had roaming around the world for the last few decades, all over South America and Central America, the Caribbean, Africa, the Middle East. As we speak, there are teams of federal agents in army fatigues, dressed like they're ready for combat, walking around with military equipment like assault rifles, tanks, grenade launchers, and they are just grabbing protesters off the street, just grabbing them, kidnapping them, throwing them in unmarked cars with absolutely no reason, no justification, no cause, no formal arrest, no Miranda rights, none of that, and taking them to what are essentially black sites that they have in the city and across the state. And of course, this is on the typical law enforcement response to protests in the United States, which is gratuitous violence, rubber-coated metal bullets being shot at protesters, sometimes in point-blank range. A few people in Portland have lost their eyesight. Using tear gas, which is essentially a chemical weapon, unprovoked against peaceful protesters, launching flashbang grenades at them. So when you add in the propensity for gratuitous violence into a situation where literal black ops teams, federal black ops teams, have been given license to just grab people off the street without just cause, without any reason or anything like that, this situation can very quickly escalate to where it morphs into just a flat out government program to disappear political enemies and to do state-sanctioned torture and even possibly murders. Because this is exactly what's happened in dozens of countries around the world where the CIA funds and arms violent government black ops teams to go after their political enemies. This has happened in Chile, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Uruguay, Argentina, Bolivia, Venezuela. The list goes on, and I'll get to the precedent that our foreign policy has set for this kind of authoritarian crackdown against political dissidents. But first, I think it's important that we recognize how we even got to this place to begin with, where Trump even has the tools to make something like this happen. A lot of people who haven't closely followed the rise of the national security apparatus post 9/11. They don't understand that what Trump is doing with the secret police in Portland, and eventually what he's planning on doing in different cities around the country, they don't understand that he's operating from a legal framework that almost all the Democrats and Republicans have agreed should be existence for decades. This all goes back to the Patriot Act, which was passed almost unanimously in the Senate. There was only one person who opposed it in the Senate, and it passed with wide-reaching bipartisan support in the House, including prominent Republicans like Nancy Pelosi voting for it. And it was Joe Biden who originally authored most of the Patriot Act. And it was literally that legislation that passed in 2001 that formed the Department of Homeland Security, and that formed its or smaller agencies like Customs and Border Protections, which falls under the Department of Homeland Security. And when you look at how the Patriot Act was crafted and the expansive powers that it gave to the executive branch, what's happening right now is only a logical conclusion. You don't create an entire government department and give it all types of unheard of spying powers and surveillance powers of everyone in the country, basically to do a mass surveillance and warrantless spying on anybody in the country. You don't give that department that much power. You don't give that department the ability to, or the authority to, perform covert operations within the United States, covert law enforcement operations within the United States, and give them powers like the ability to completely circumvent habeas corpus and the right to due process, and allow them to detain anybody who they declare is a terrorist indefinitely, without a trial, without ever having to see a judge, without ever having to see a lawyer. You don't give them that power. You don't give them the ability to act like a secret police in the United States if you never expect them to use it. So, yeah, Trump gets a whole lot of blame for enacting this and taking such drastic, aggressive measures to go after protesters. He gets a lot of blame for that because he's the head of the executive branch. But there's an argument to be made that the Democrats and Republicans who created this monstrosity to begin with, there's an argument to be made that they're equally as responsible, if not more responsible, because an authoritarian is going to act like an authoritarian. But when you, for 2 decades, create and expand the powers, the tools to crack down on dissent, is it really that much of a surprise when an authoritarian uses those very same tools for their intended purpose? So I think that's an important part of the story that's being left out conveniently by a lot of people, because they're trying to make it seem like, oh, this is just Trump. Congress gave him a lot of these tools and powers and authorities that he's abusing right now. So let's not let them off the hook. And it's worth mentioning that, oh, the Patriot Act wasn't just some bad vote that happened in 2001 and then, oh, Nancy Pelosi has changed her mind since then. No, she has continued to reauthorize it and expand the powers of the Patriot Act. It's right now where it is. It's way beyond the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection. It's way beyond the wildest imaginations of the Bush administration. So Nancy Pelosi has been right on board with this type of secret police operating covertly in the United States. She's been on board with it the entire time. And as a matter of fact, she, even as Donald Trump has been president, she continues to reauthorize these programs. She continues to reauthorize the budgets for the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection, even though they flagrantly violate the Constitution, civil rights, human rights, any kind of rights you can think of. She continues to allow these agencies and these departments to exist. So now that Trump's using it in a way that she might not personally approve of, she's going to feign outrage and pretend like she's this big civil libertarian, and that's just not the case. So right now, to me, the only logical conclusion to stop this secret police that Trump is forming or has formed, and to prevent any future action like this from Trump or any other future president, only way possible is to completely abolish the Department of Homeland Security. It does not need to exist. Ever since its inception, it's been nothing but a affront to the Constitution and all types of domestic privacy laws and civil rights in this country. So there is, and more than that, this is incredibly important. Nobody can ever really point to legitimate terrorist threats that the Department of Homeland Security prevents. And that's not to say that there is absolutely zero cases of terrorism that would have occurred in the United States that they prevent. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to err on the side of that it hasn't, since they haven't provided proof of that. But even if there were one out of 1,000 instances of what they're doing at the Department of Homeland Security, they actually prevent a form of act of terrorism in the United States. Why can't the law enforcement aspect of it be done by official law enforcement agencies in this country? You don't need to create an entire secret police to do that. So yes, abolish ICE, abolish Customs and Border Protection, and abolish the entire Department of Homeland Security, because it's an affront to the Constitution. And this is the exact type of powers that are given to the executive branch through the Patriot Act. So we need to completely revoke the entire Patriot Act as well.